Okay. Yeah, I find when I just use my computer to record, it takes up like 10 times more space. But if I use Zoom to do it, it kind of reduces the size of the file, which is good. Anyway, that's me. How about you, Sherry? What are your, why are you interested in this?
As a co-founder with you and Catherine, the gardens mean a lot to me. And even though I'm not as active as I used to be, my heart is still with the gardens. So I want to see if I can help.
Who wants to go next?
I can go next. I'm driving, but I'll be home pretty soon. I'm just coming from viewing an apartment over on the east side. But my name is Dominique, and I'm with the Sierra Club, and I want to send some regards from Charles, who I'm not sure if he replied, but Charles actually took a position with another organization, so hasn't been with the Sierra Club, but I know he'd like to stay in the loop. And I'm here because I like good food and good people, so gardening comes in between.
I don't know if Charles is on my list. I don't see him. Oh, wait, yes, he is. He's on my list. So he got the invite.
Yes, so I'm happy to pass him, just keep him in the loop. We still check in every now and then.
Great.
Well, I'll probably make a link so that anybody who doesn't make it can watch the movie on YouTube or something later.
Okay. Who else?
You?
I'm Catherine Schneider. I'm another co-founder of the Rice Street Gardens. And yeah, just want to make sure it keeps going, and it would be ideal if it kept going forever.
I'll jump in. I'm Andrew Montaigne. Also go by Andy. I like gardening. I live nearby, try to help out here and there when I can. And I'd like to see the garden stick around too. Yeah, I work with gardening and plants and food a lot, so it's right in my wheelhouse.
I can go next. I am Natalie. I am with the Twin Cities Agricultural Land Trust, and we are, like, as a group, generally interested in finding ways to preserve gardening land in the Twin Cities. And so we're hoping to work with you some of the technical aspects of how this land might be held in trust to ensure that it can continue to be used for gardening into the future.
Thank you for being here.
Sure. Thanks for having us.
Me, I'm Dana Ferguson. I am the garden administrator with Rice Street Gardens, hired to be a part-time employee with a 3-year grant, which is in the last year, and just hoping to see the garden continue, with or without me.
We hope it's with you, because
Yeah.
you're doing a great job.
Yeah.
Definitely takes a lot off our plate.
Yeah.
So Eugene, that leaves you.
Why don't you call me Gene? My last name
Oh.
is Gene Ranieri. I think I've met either by phone or in person 3 of the 4 founders. Catherine, you and I met the day of the cleanup. We were moving stuff around, and you started talking about housing, and I suggested I'd be willing to help. And the more I look at community gardens, I'm nervous about what's happening in the county. You are one that's threatened. There's a possibility of others either closing or reducing their size. So I think it's really important. I have expertise in a lot of public policy. I, for a long, long time, was a lobbyist, a researcher, either for cities, mostly cities, represented a lot of folks in things like tax increment financing, pollinators, a lot of activities, and have some things I can help with. And I'll be here to listen and see how I can help you. Also, as a master gardener, I would like to sometime maybe talk about how our Ramsey County Master Gardeners could work with your garden, but I think that's not the topic for tonight.
You could come to our 9:30 meeting. We meet every Monday morning.
Okay, thank you. Just send me, okay.
I'll send you an invite.
Oh yeah, I wasn't able the last couple of weeks because I had COVID.
Ah, Well, Ron does now.
It's okay. I hope you hear
You
it
see me,
quick.
you see me fall to the floor here after a while. I've reached my limit.
Oh, yeah, I understand the fatigue. It was pretty brutal.
Well, let's start. I think, Catherine, it still makes sense to kind of give people an overview of what the gardens look like. I'm going to share my screen and then share. Let's see if I can find it. This thing. Can anybody see this?
Yes.
Yep.
I think it's upside down.
Okay, so this is a picture of the garden area, and in fact, all the area that's owned by the water department. This is McCarran's Pub, and this is Galilee Lutheran. This is a used car lot over here. And then the gardens here, out of 11 or 12 acres, we're using about 2 of them. And if I go to the next slide, you can get a sense. We have about 190 plots in this area, 67 over here leaning towards Roselawn. And that leaves still quite a bit of space. I think we've been told that in the water department land, there's about 7 acres that could be used for development, which I presume is mostly along here and all the rest of this. This is our parking lot where we can drive in. And so that's the kind of a general lay of the land. This is an idea that the Habitat people came up with. They're trying to meet both they were going to build townhomes here, but they can only get about 30 of them in there. And Maplewood has been encouraging this land to be used with like 190 family units. And so Habitat said, well, we can get a developer for over here for 100 units, and we can get maybe another 45 units here. That would be about 170. And that kind of meets their goal. I don't know how hard Maplewood would push that. It's one thing we need to find out.
Well, and let me just add one thing here, Ron, is one of the things that's really frustrating about this plan and what Maplewood is saying is that the Rice Street Alliance was formed and they did this plan on all the land all the land in between, I don't know, that's like within a mile, I guess, of Rice and Larpenteur, the intersection of Rice and Larpenteur. So our land was part of it. And their plan was that this part of it be a garden, part of it be a farmer's market, and then some of it be housing, but the housing was not as dense as what Maplewood is requiring. And so what's super frustrating about that is that they signed off on Rice and Larpenteur on that plan when it was developed, but then when they went to their own city planning, they did something different. So Jean, maybe that's something that, at some point you could help us with, but just so everybody knows the history there, that's super frustrating for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And prior to that, consultants were hired by the Tri-City area with Ramsey County, and they did a survey of assets in the area. And they said at the meeting that Rice Street Gardens was the jewel of this area.
That's actually the same plan that I'm talking about that the Rice Street Alliance put together was after they did their survey, then they put a plan together. And
there was an group called PAC Properties that tried to develop development housing in this area, and they could not do it in a way that made enough money. And they actually showed that the gardens were cut to like just a little triangle over here. And then their plan was to have only people who in their apartments to be able to use those gardens. And that whole deal kind of fell through because they couldn't make enough money. This one, we don't like this plan, by the way, because it does wipe out our drive-in. This assumes they could buy land by this boathouse company, which may or may not be true. It also shows buying the corner lot. Anyway, so to go a little deeper, this is kind of what I started to think, thinking might make sense. if this is the area that we, oh, here's Skylar. Huh. Anyway,
Oh, great.
yeah, so I mean, so what I've been trying to do is figure out how we can, and what I've
Hey,
told,
Ron,
yeah,
can you just stop for one moment and let's let Skylar introduce himself and let's catch him up? Hi, Skylar.
Hello. Hi. So I'm just sorry I'm late. I was teaching a workshop until now. So
Oh, cool.
I'm going to be driving for a little bit, so I'm not going to have my video on, but I'm on the board of T-Cult, and I also grow food at Urban Roots in St. Paul on the east side. And I guess I've been involved and sort of observing and trying to be active in what's going on at Rice Street Gardens and the possible development for maybe it's been almost a year now since I started talking to y'all. And yeah, I'm excited to be here and learn about kind of what the next goals are and some of the different ways this could play out. So
And just an FYI, Ron is recording this and right now he's showing us a PowerPoint of what the different proposals are, that what Habitat wanted and then what we would like. So go
Great.
ahead.
Thanks a lot.
yeah, so we'll give you a link so you can see the pictures and everything later. Anyway, this was kind of my sense of what we really would like to do. This reduces, remember there was 190 plots here, but my thought is that we could actually, if I can get to the next one. Uh-oh, what happened? Oh, yeah, so here's my real hope for the area was that area that I showed, that we could actually get control of that. And this was our parking lot. And so this actually involves improving the parking lot by paving it, putting in places where people could have a farmer's market along these green things. And then we could, and this is like where the current road comes in. So the idea is that could be an access or a parking lot for whatever developments are made. And then so my thought is that we could take down trees along here and add more plots, maybe more than what I've shown. And I forget what the net is here, but I think there's another 30. So it's 190 plus 30. So we're getting to 220. So it's not too, and maybe we could get another 20. So it's not super much less than what we currently have. And then the thought is,
Wait, just for the benefit of the people that are not on the on video. So what Ron is showing is, the garden is basically L-shaped. And so the gardens that are on Roselawn, we essentially are willing to give those up and then just keep the major portion of it, but maybe add a few extra. And then he's talking about paving the parking lot exactly where it is.
Mhm.
And then there's also some trees that would maybe be planted in an area that right now is just tall grass and it's over by the wetlands. And it could maybe be fruit trees would be cool.
Mhm.
yep. So anyway, this is kind of what I mean, it recognizes that having low-cost housing is somewhere in the area is really a valuable thing too. It's not like we're saying that's a bad idea. I think if people could develop the other portion, let me go back. So you can see this still leaves quite a bit of area for development with housing of different sorts, whether it's Habitat or whatever. The Habitat guy has been very helpful in all of this. So I'm inclined to say, if we can work with them, that would be nice.
And the deal with Habitat is that they're used to doing homes. So there's 28 townhomes in this picture. And then there's this 4-story, 100 unit condo / retail thing that Habitat is not, that's not their thing. And so they're looking at Beacon Interfaith, partnering with Beacon Interfaith to maybe do those.
Right, but we don't actually have a company that's willing to take that on yet. Beacon got a different thing going in Maplewood, so it's probably a year off. But so
Also, Beacon, I forgot about that. Beacon declined working with Habitat in the near future.
Well,
but
just
they might be willing later.
I mean, Habitat thinks it'll be at least a year because they've got another major development going on in Maplewood. So they probably won't be willing to take on another one.
And when you say they, who are you talking about?
Beacon.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, building a building like that is pretty expensive. It's like a $30 million loan that they would have to take out. So yeah, it's not trivial to get somebody to do that. Anyway, so this is kind of our plan. And the problem is, well, how can we guarantee that the gardens continue? And what the idea I've thrown out there is that we raise enough money so that whether somebody is developing this part, and we could get an agreement with them that says you'll not take, you'll leave the gardens alone, or alternatively, we could just buy the land and we could buy this portion out of the 12 acres that the water department owns. If we could come up with $1 million, we might be able to talk them into just giving us this portion and then let whatever happens in the rest of it happen. That one near-term meeting that's really needed is one with the water department. They have we know people there who are friends, but they've hired a real estate person to try to deal with the land. And it might be important to meet with that person and see if, how much would it take for us to actually be able to buy the land. That would be kind of ideal because then we could do whatever we want. But in some ways, this is kind of a more valuable portion because it's right along Rice Street and there's potential for doing other stuff there. But anyway, so the other thing is when I mentioned to Habitat that if we could raise some funds, would that be good? And they were all excited about that. The idea of having somebody else participate in buying the land from the water department is something they liked. Then assuming we get control one way or another of that land, then what I was thinking after talking to Natalie and Skylar and somebody from the Rondo Land Trust was that we should somehow turn this into a land trust so that it can continue as a garden for a long time.
Hey, Skylar and Natalie, are you guys familiar with Makia from the Rondo Community Land Trust?
Natalie? I haven't met Makia, no, but I do think I've heard about Makia.
Okay. Yeah, she's only been on the job for like 6 months. She's a real dynamo. She and Ron's had one conversation with her. So
yeah, she's really busy right now. I think
they're moving. She's buying up a couple different buildings. And on another note, the Minnesota Tool Library is probably going to be a tenant of theirs right next to Mississippi Market. The old dry cleaners on Selby, which we're super excited about.
Another thing she's involved with is the idea of putting land bridges across Highway 94, Interstate 94, and basically recreating Rondo there. So, I mean, all that keeps her pretty busy.
Yeah, TCAL is definitely connected to the Rondo Land Trust. And I think like Skylar and I have been kind of talking about like when and where we fit into this. And I think one of the things that we wanted to offer was like a workshop or something where we could just like walk people through like, what is a land trust? What is an easement? Like, what are different models for how this could happen? And hopefully getting more of the gardeners involved, just because I think like when you're talking about communally owning land, like it's really important that everyone understands what that entails, like before jumping into something and like making sure, because there are different models to do it. And so finding a model that really feels right for the community is important. And I think that by figuring out kind of the structure that you want to have together, you'll probably be more successful with fundraising too. If you can say like, this is where we're putting the money. This is like how we're going to make sure this land is preserved. So it'd be really like, we're happy to do that, to put together some, like an overview of different models for what communally holding land looks like, or using easements or other policy strategies. If that's something that you're interested in,
That
it'd
sounds
be
like a
great to
really,
get wider buy-in.
that sounds like a really good idea. And, you know, you're right. We really haven't done a very good job of reaching out to the gardeners, and we do need to do that. Yeah. I think what our thing is, we know they want to keep it, and so we're just like kind of forging ahead, but you're right, we really need to get involved with them and let them know. I don't even know. I think all of them maybe know that there's possibility of the land being sold, but I'm not even sure if they're all know of that.
I like the idea of a workshop because I think what's important is going to be covered how we're going to run this garden in the future. And I think funders are going to look at that and see what is the entity that's going to do this. And if it's some sort of legal entity, whatever, nonprofit, et cetera, or trust, land trust, I think that helps us a lot in trying to find funding.
Yeah.
And there are really different models. Like I know we've talked with Ron about like maybe the church would own the land, and that's like a totally different model than like maybe the gardeners like own the land and trust together and have a board that determines like that makes decisions. So like, yeah, there are like really big conversations to be had about what the future of holding land looks like. And all of those options can include like keeping the garden, but they mean really different things for like how that garden is, for who's making decisions about it and things like that.
Yeah, and I think in a lot of these different scenarios, you'd have to create some bylaws for how the land trust or however you're holding land would function. And then I think you're talking about in those bylaws, how decisions are made, and kind of like how democratic is this project, and so the more democratic I feel like the process of deciding how the democratic process are going to happen later, like the more democratic this part of the process is, I think will shed on to just going forward how democratic the decisions are made. But yeah, there's a lot of different ways that could look too, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the goals for me for this meeting was to say that we need to have kind of like, here's our plan. We're gonna try to do this, and we'd like the garden to look like this, and we'd like it to be managed in this way in the future, and kind of all the things you're talking about, maybe with a guess as to which approach we use, as opposed to, like part of the problem now is we have 3 or 4 options. And when we go to, I'd like to have something which we could go to funders of different sorts. Like if we're doing a crowdfunding of it, you probably need a very short emotional thing that says this is why it's important and here's what we're looking for. If you're going to somebody who's been giving away grants for the last 50 years, they probably have a whole long list of things they want to ask. And some of the questions will be like, well, how are you going to use our money and things like that. We've done that a little bit when we got the grant money for Dana Ferguson from the Lutheran Church. We had to fill out 25 pages worth of documentation just to get $4,000 each year. So, but I think that's one of the goals for this meeting I was hoping we could get, which was that we could start to, break it down and get a process started in which we could say, this is what we're really trying to do. That was partly why I made those maps, because I wanted to capture at least visually what it was we were trying to do.
Yeah, those were good maps. That was as soon as I was able to kind of look back and get on screen, I was really proud. I mean, I'm really happy of all this hard work that y'all have been doing. I mean, I know this is in a lot of ways the beginning of maybe the fight, but it feels good to have it not be able to be as present in this for a couple of months, see where things are at, and definitely want to echo the desire to be supportive still. And back to what Catherine, you were saying, the idea of bringing the gardeners back in, kind of like the whole of gardeners, like looking at Rice Street Gardens. beyond the founders. I wonder if that's maybe a role that, while we can discuss some of the fundraising, if we want to reserve some time here to talk about that, because I think that that could be something that some of us allies can pick up in the in-between space. And honestly, it feels like a really good place for that, because y'all have worked to identify what's possible and come up with like a solid plan. So you can go to folks and say, yo, we've been working, we talked to you last year, like, what do you think of this plan? Can we bring you in? Can you help? And again, that's something that I'm always down to be a part of. So
I would add, thanks, Dominique. Yeah, I would add, like, I understand the desire to like just start raising money, but I think that like having a process to determine like what gardeners want the future of the garden to look like will also clarify like where you're asking for money. Like if the gardeners decide they like truly want a land trust, there are groups like Agrarian Commons and Renewing the Countryside that have been super successful at partnering and like raising money. It's all kind of new, but like they're doing that work, and I think they would be happy to partner. But all of that kind of comes after like a process with the gardeners to really decide, like, is this going to be a land trust, or is it going to be like a nonprofit that the church is running? Or like, I think there's some like big differences in strategy that maybe should not be overlooked or shouldn't be like rushed into until there's like that engagement process.
Well, I really like your idea of having a training in land trust so that we can all understand that. And I'm thinking that it should be, I'm thinking the next meeting should be a gardeners meeting, and to tell them what's happening. Ron can show his maps. We can say we have no idea when it's gonna, when it's gonna be sold, but we would like to try to raise money, and we need to make some decisions on who's going to hold the land if we are able to buy it, and then have the training in what a land trust is.
I think like about maybe 95% of the gardeners would have no idea what the land trust is.
Yeah,
I mean,
no,
very few people would. Yeah,
they
so that
just,
would be a lot of education,
mostly they just want a garden,
right?
to be honest with, they don't think much.
They don't care.
Yeah, that's what I'm kind of worried about too, is that I don't know how much participation we'll get from the gardeners, because that's what I think too. They don't really care. They just want to garden. But we need to ask them.
That's totally
Yeah.
fair. And I think so. I think like in this conversation, we're using technical terms that maybe people don't care about, but like, I think we can break it down in a way that's a little more accessible about like, yeah, like just different models for like who gets to make decisions about the garden going forward if it's held in this way. And it doesn't have to be marketed as like, come learn about land trusts. It can just be like a conversation about the future of the garden, something like that.
Exactly.
I think it's really critical to try and talk to the gardeners. If someone to volunteer, fine, and that would be great. But I think they have to at least buy in and understand what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to do, and I agree that we should do that.
Yeah. So that really should be our next meeting, is having a meeting with the gardeners and seeing. And I'm wondering if it should be in person or if it should be via Zoom. And yeah, it seems to me it probably should be in person, and maybe at Galilee. That's when we have in-person meetings, that's where they normally are. Or we could do both. Ron, wouldn't that be easy for you guys? Because you already do you do both at church?
Yeah, we do have a screen there whenever I can make the connections work, so that people could see it as well as being there in person. That is
So we could do, that's the way. And basically it would be giving and it would be called, the future of Rice Street Gardens. And then maybe a brief description about what a land trust is, and that, what our plan is, I guess.
Yeah, actually, I was, as we've been talking about this, I was wondering if it wouldn't be good for Natalie or Skylar or whoever to give a briefing to this group. the ones we're talking to tonight, because I don't think I understand. Except, for example, Natalie, if I just were to buy the land personally and then said, I want to turn this into a land trust, could you guys do that? I mean, what's the next step? How does that work? Let's say
Yeah.
we own the land, so that's not an issue.
I was hoping Stephen would join us because he's the lawyer. But I think you could buy the land and then like sell it to the trust for $1 or something. So
Yeah.
like you are not the owner of the land. It would be like, I think, Skylar, do you know, it's like a 501
It's not a
C
C3.
thing.
Yeah, I
It's
think it's a 501c. Yeah. I'm not sure. I thought it was maybe 2. Maybe
Skylar, you're going in and out. We're really not hearing anything.
yeah.
Sound very
I
Dominique
think
mysterious.
said
you're-
501c2.
Yeah, C2. Okay. So is it better now?
Yes,
Can you hear me now?
yes.
Great. I do think that there are land trusts that have land donated to them quite often. So I do think that donating land to 501c2s is very possible, or selling for $1, like Natalie said. But I don't know about like the inner mechanisms of a 501c2. I mean, I've never worked at one, and I imagine it functions a lot like a typical nonprofit, is my understanding. While there is a C3 with land trust. So Dominique, can you be a C3 and a land trust?
Don't ask me.
But
I
so
don't,
I'm not
basically, like the
that
land,
expert,
the land is
these are all
held.
really good questions.
and that's what we would do some research to like have some better answers, and people like Valentine and Stephen who work through more of the specific policy aspects of it. But the land is held by the 501c2. There's like a board of elected people that make decisions together about the land. You can, so like just for an example, land trusts are used in a few contexts. This is like a pretty unique context. They're used for conservation.
Mhm.
They're used sometimes actually like farming families use them
Yeah.
to like keep farms in the family.
Mhm.
And then
Mhm.
also housing land trusts are common, where the land is held and people can like buy a house on that land, but they don't own the land.
Oh, I
And so it
forgot.
dramatically brings down the cost of housing.
Hmm.
So it's that same kind of idea, like a person, you could still have people renting plots, but it would keep the land at a lower value.
Mhm.
And then so there are other things like easements, where like even if you didn't have a trust, say the church owned the land, you could still put a conservation easement on the land that would strip the development rights.
Yeah.
So there are like a few different, and that's why I think it's an important conversation, because like there are different ways to do it, but they have different implications for like who's making decisions and like, yeah, basically
Well,
for who's
then
making decisions.
maybe before we introduce the idea of how it's going to be held, that should be that should be maybe something the leadership group should, people, and it could be all of you people, that we think, like without the gardeners, we first kind of figure out what does this mean, and what would be our suggestion to go forward.
I have another concern. We're dealing with a public entity who owns the land now. Are there any constraints or anything that requires them to follow a process that may be detrimental to an idea of a trust? Maybe we should talk to them and see, how do they sell land? Does it have to be competitively bid, or can they sell it directly to us? That will dictate what we structure.
Ron, maybe if Jean's willing, when you meet with Steve, whoever you're going to meet with at the Capital Region Water District, that you bring him along to ask some of those questions about how the land.
How's it transfer? How can we buy it directly without any sort of competitive bidding process like some cities have to do?
I mean, they were kind of doing that with the Pack Properties thing. They had written a memo of understanding, a letter of intent or something that they could buy the land because it was,
Okay.
they were going to see that it was developed. But that's why I think one of the near-term meetings that are needed are one with some of us and the water department, presumably, and also the person that's working the real estate on their end to see what they're willing to accept.
Well, and also because, you know, they are a citizen group or a, you know, a taxpayer supported group. And if they bought that land for $2 million, and they're trying to make money off of it, well, as a community group, we could be saying, we don't feel like you should have to make money off of this. This is still a good use of community, you know, assets.
Yeah, there are some well-meaning people there. We have run the gardens for 5 years without paying a penny. You know, and they wrote the legal agreement to let us do that. So they've been very supportive. And they actually paid $2.5 million for the land when they bought it. Everybody thinks they'd be willing to accept $2 million for the total package because that would, right now, they're just trying to get some of their money back.
Ron, when you say $2.5 million, is that the whole 7 acres or just the 2
Oh,
acres?
11 acres, yeah.
I thought it was 13, yeah, but whatever, yeah.
Well,
They
it might
have
have-
more
it
than
was
just
12 or
their-
13, I don't know, but it goes all the way out to the railroad tracks. A large fraction of it is watershed. There's a pond and watershed and areas that you can't do anything on. And so there's really about 7 acres that are buildable or usable. But
So
yes.
what if did
go ahead.
something like, say, the TCALT folks came up with kind of 3 or 4 scenarios of like, these are different ways that garden land can be preserved, and then met with some of you to actually like make that a little more real.
Mhm.
Like, if it was held this way, that would look like this. Like, we would
That's a
have a
great idea.
doing
Yeah,
it.
there's going to be pros and cons.
We could run that by some people at the city, whoever we think needs to see it, to say like, are there any problems with any of these? Like, would we be, I don't know, are we like presenting a false opportunity if there's like some legal loophole we don't know about or something like that? And then we start this process of planning a meeting with the gardeners. And at that time, we have these like 3 scenarios that, or 4, or however many scenarios with some more
Mhm.
realistic details of like what that might look like in this context.
Oh, I think that's a great idea.
I like that idea. I think we have to talk to not only the water board, but also the city of Maplewood. So we have 2 public entities to deal with.
Yeah.
And city of Maplewood, they have a community garden. I looked at their comprehensive plan. There are a lot of folks have suggested community gardens and parks are a big deal for the city. So I think they may be open too, because I think the city runs a garden over on Edgerton Street. Cool.
I thought that, oh, maybe I'm thinking of a different one.
No, I think it's a city runs it, I think. They own it.
Are you talking about the really big one that's 11 acres?
No, I'm talking about Edgerton Park.
There's one right by
city-
by a school.
By a school.
Oh,
That's a
Gotcha.
smaller one though.
Yeah.
okay.
The big one is, I think, 700, and it's a little bit further north, run by a church.
Yeah, that one's owned by a church.
Yeah.
So
Right.
maybe
go ahead.
maybe pulling in Sean Finwell again, as a Maplewood person, who's also happens to be listed as like the contact for this Edgerton Community Garden.
Yeah.
I would keep that name in the mix.
We've been dealing with her now.
yeah.
It's easy to deal with.
Yeah, that's who we had to go to get the gardens going in the first place. So she's definitely very familiar with the gardens and with us.
Yep.
So yeah, I really like the idea, Natalie, what you guys are saying. And when do you think you could have something like that ready for us?
Good question. What do you think, Skylar? A couple weeks?
Yeah, I think honestly a couple weeks to a month. If
Okay,
I'm
that's awesome.
that sounds honest. I mean, probably a month I would
I was
think.
kind of thinking more of a month.
I think a month for that process, like maybe in a couple weeks we could come up with the basics, and then we could kind of get together
Yeah.
to refine.
Yeah, that's true.
So basics where you introduce that idea to us, and then another 2 weeks where we have a meeting with the gardeners. Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
I
I
don't
think
think
so.
it necessarily needs to wait before informing the gardeners in general. I think it might be a good time at this next Monday meeting to just give like a status update. And then folks could also start to self-identify and say, oh, have this at the forefront of their minds for what it becomes more relevant in a couple of weeks. So I wonder if there's like, and we'd be down to at Sierra Club, like pay for, I mean, y'all already got interpretation on lock for the most part, but if you wanted to do like handouts or flyers with just a quick update.
Well,
I don't know
okay,
what you all
so
think about that.
when
I don't
you
know
say
the
Monday
makeup
meetings,
of those meetings.
the Monday meetings are Ron and me and Dana. So it doesn't include
Got
gardeners.
you.
We don't really have scheduled meetings with the gardeners. But we could.
So I wonder, go ahead.
Well, I'm just thinking we could pick some day in July, probably a Saturday morning, maybe, or maybe it should be an evening. I don't know. Or maybe we do both to try to get the most number of gardeners to a meeting that is a hybrid meeting at Galilee Lutheran if you want, or it's going to be, and then we're going to just talk about the future of Rice Street Gardens. And just because right now, most people don't even know that it's, that they're being sold, I think, because we haven't sent out an email about that, right, guys?
No.
Okay, so the gardeners, yeah, don't know very much at all.
Well,
Well, we keep telling them though that you can garden this year, and we've said that for like
Yeah,
3 years
I
now,
was-
so I think they know that there may be a year when they're not able to garden sometime in the future.
well, a
I was
lot of
gonna say, I
people,
feel like they're at least aware of like what was already shared. Like honestly, as aware as I was when I pulled up to this meeting this evening. So,
okay,
it's not like there's
Alright.
folks who are totally out the loop.
yeah, some fraction of the people kind of know that this is an issue and keep asking about it. And the best answer is don't worry about it for this year or next year, but which is still maybe a good answer. But I think talking about what the future might be like would be good. If you do something at Galilee, Catherine, don't do anything on the 23rd of afternoon, because that's when my next book launch is going to be on that day, and there hopefully
Well, how
hundreds of
about-
people will be there.
oh, wow. How about on Monday, the three of us look at our calendars and come up with a meeting for the gardeners sometime in July.
Okay.
You'd have to look at the church calendar too. That's where you're gonna,
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
usually
right.
fairly empty in
In
the summer.
summertime.
okay.
I would also suggest that we try to meet with the water board in the city before we try to introduce the concept to the gardeners in detail later. So within the next month, we should probably try and meet with the city and the water board.
Yeah.
I would
And
say
that was-
like get a day on the calendar with the gardeners in late July and like schedule an appointment now with the city and water board for
Yep.
mid-July.
Yep.
And that gives us a deadline to be ready and like
Yeah.
a little bit of time to revise things if they have any issues.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree with that. I think we have to set a time frame for ourselves and make sure we cover some bases.
So I feel like the meeting with the city and with Capital Region Water District can be a really small group. Ron's been doing that for us now, but Jean, if you wanted to join him, Ron, what do you think? If you wanted to join Ron, I feel like you have some expertise about real estate that we don't necessarily have,
That's
especially
right.
commercial real estate, that might be really helpful in the conversation. What do you
I
think,
know-
Ron or Jean?
I'm not really a real estate expert, but I do know a lot about political policy process and how governments work, and I can help there. And I do know a little bit about how land transfers work. Yeah, I think I can be helpful.
So Ron, what do you think about having you and Jean working together to set up a meeting with both the Capital Region Water District and with the city of Maplewood, just to tell them, I mean, they kind of already have an idea that we're doing this, but just to see what flaws might be in our plan.
Yeah, I think that both of those.
He called, join that group too.
Sure.
Sure. Yeah.
And who would you want from there? Or is there like you, or is there a?
I think either of us, and we might end up inviting like Stephen, who's a lawyer, or Valentine, who's like really kind of the expert on land trust, just because they have a deeper understanding than we do.
Yeah, I think if you wanted to invite me and Natalie to anything you think would be helpful for us to be at, I think we would be the folks from TCALT that would, I think, are ready to kind of be showing up at these sort of things. So yeah, we'd like to join for as much as we can.
I don't think we'll get any, final answers from anybody, but this is all part of an exploration where, you see how they react. And it's like if we went to the water department and said, we want to buy your land for this part of it for $1 million, see what they do. Does he say, forget it? Or, well, maybe that would be okay. Or, just, it's kind of a feeling out process in both cases.
Exactly. All right.
Go
ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say too, before when I was trying to say this, I think you all couldn't hear me, but I think a 501c2 and a 501c3 are really similar in that they're both technically corporations, and it's a way of kind of incorporating a group of people into a corporation. And a 501c3, I think, is more tailored to be a container for a mission and to create a nonprofit that has a goal, really, and like usually associated more with programming that they want to pull off. And I think a 501c2 is more tailored to, I even just looked it up, but their sole goal is to hold land, so that's the container, the legal container for a group of people who want to hold land together, or a corporation that can hold land. So if you were creating a land trust, you would be creating a nonprofit corporation that would hold on to land. And a lot of land trusts have, like, especially I saw a presentation by a land trust in New Jersey that does more with housing, but that land trust has an executive director and a humongous staff, so these are what I think they're familiar as nonprofits, is what you'd think about as a nonprofit. But so that's something to think about too.
So are you guys
it
one of
formalizes
these,
a lot.
are you one of these 501c2s or whatever is that what TCALT is? Or are you just?
We're a 501c3, I think. And you can have so just as an example, like the Land Stewardship Project is an organization that works with agriculture. They have both a 501c3 and a 501c4. So it's like the same kind of group of people, but they have legally split it so that they can do advocacy. So I think that's another way that sometimes that can happen. Like TCALT is primarily educationally focused, but theoretically could have like a second part of it that would be a 501c2. But I think we are more interested in like supporting other, like facilitating the emergence of other land trusts versus holding land ourselves.
Yeah. I was
like
kind of hoping you could do both.
Well,
yeah, so I think TCALT doesn't have the capacity to actually like.
But Rondo does. The Rondo Community Land Trust does. So that they might be an option for us, that they might want. And Makia did, she was positive in her, right? She's saying that she might be able to be the land trust, right, Ron?
I think so. I'm more
Again, she's
concerned-
the person we would have to talk to, but I think it's, I think doing more exploration and understanding, like having you guys teach us what a land trust really is and giving us those options is a good way for us to start. And then we'll be better able to pursue who we would want to partner with on that regard.
I have a question for Natalie and Skylar. The Trust for Public Land, are you familiar with that? And how does that differ from a 501c2 or the organizations you're with?
I don't know personally, the Trust for Public Land. I would be curious myself. I'm not sure I have much on that. Natalie, do you know?
I'm looking them up right now. They're a 501c3. I think they're like a big national organization that like is mostly conservation minded. So like putting land into conservation, not into agricultural use. And they might work. So there are these like big umbrella organizations that work kind of in the way that I think TCOT hopes to work, is like Agrarian Commons, for example, is this network of people who are interested in land trusts who then support smaller land trusts with like technical assistance and the development of their own land trusts.
The reason I ask is that when I was looking at their website, I zeroed in on Minnesota and wanted to find out if they had ever done anything in the Twin Cities or in Maplewood. And to my surprise, I discovered that Trust for Public Land helped purchase the old priory in Maplewood that was threatened for development, and now it's in some sort of park or something in the city of Maplewood. And they now are moving into areas of community gardens and doing lots of parks, reclaiming parks in low-income neighborhoods throughout the country. So they changed a little bit. I'm just wondering if that's another, they could be a funder, because it sounds like they can raise a lot of money. I think they actually, at least when I read on their website, that they claim that they helped negotiate a better deal for the Frogtown farm. That they were
Wow.
involved.
What was the name of that organization again?
It is called the Trust for Public Lands, and they have offices throughout the country. I agree with Natalie, they're rather large. They've done several projects in our state. They've done one in Maplewood. They've done a couple in St. Paul. They bought land. The Wilder Foundation was selling the Frogtown farm, and because that used to be their headquarters. And Trust for Public Land down and negotiated for a better price, raised some money, got money from lots of corporations, and bought the property. And now I think it's a city park or some sort of it's a farm.
Wow, that's cool. So, and which one in Maplewood did you say they bought?
I think it was the Benedictine nuns had a convent, and it was on some pretty nice property. And there is on their website, they actually have a little description of what they did and what was being threatened. They were being threatened. The nuns had a decision to make, either find a way to take care of the pension fund, raise some money. So they sold part of their land, and they also made sure that when it was sold, it went into a public trust of some sort. And I think maybe the city of Maplewood or something are now have that land, and it's being conserved for natural.
Wow, okay, well, that definitely is a good group to add to our spreadsheet.
I think like two quick thoughts. One is like, if the decision is to form a land trust, and there's a lot of support with organizations like that, for Agrarian Commons, like folks who will help raise money and like provide more support than probably TCOT can individually provide. And also that could be one of the scenarios that we share, is like, what would it look like for you to form your own land trust versus like, what could it look like to work with another land trust like Rondo?
Yeah.
I don't want to overpromise what we can do, but we can try to connect with Wikia and talk about like what that scenario might look like.
That'd be awesome.
Yep.
All right. So what else do we want to?
Well, I mean, one of the things we were thinking of doing was to try to look at our list of organizations that could either support us or help fund the process. And if I can share my screen again, I can figure out. There is the chart that you had. I think, I think that's it.
Yeah.
Okay, so can people see this? This was our list of, it's a Google sheet. And so we tried to just list possible funding or support service groups. And what we're kind of hoping was that.
Hey, Ron, I'm definitely not seeing anything. I don't know if anybody else is.
Oh,
No.
wait a minute. Maybe I thought I hit share screen, but maybe not.
Also, Catherine, you sent it to us as an attachment to the meeting notice.
Yeah, you should
it
have access to it. This is the
Right.
and what I was hoping was that, and maybe you don't have to do it now, but I was, if you can, because how many we're about 7 or 8 people here. If each of us could take 3 or 4 of these and just do some preliminary research, like, I don't know, Robert Woods Johnson Foundation, would they have any interest in supporting or preservation of a garden? And if the answer is no, we should be able to look at what their mission is for their foundation and say this does not fit. But the whole idea is that in some cases, like this Mardag Foundation, I know that they have a due date for new grant requests, which is coming up this summer. And those are the kind of things we should know and fill in this. So and I'm not sure which ones. I mean, have any of you had experience with crowdfunding, for example, and would know how to make that happen? So I don't know where we should take this. I don't know that you need to volunteer right now, but if you have access to this chart, and you could put your name or initials by a few of the things so that we can start exploring, possible long-term funding support. We do obviously have to have a really well-defined story before we actually approach them, but that was something I was hoping we could start doing.
Hey, Ron, I definitely think you should add that trust for public lands
That's
into
probably
this.
Let me see if I can type it. Oh, what's it called?
Trust for public lands. And I think it's a little early for this. I think it's good to have the list, but I think it's a little early for people to actually take time and looking.
If it's something you already know, if it's one that
Right.
you're familiar with, please, look into it and see if it makes any sense. That's all I'm saying, is that otherwise I have this feeling I get stuck with all this. And at some point that will happen. And
Right. We'll
I'd
definitely
rather
share.
not have way too many things to do. And I'm just like stupid enough to actually sit down and go through them, try to find them all and see what they're doing. So I'm just kind of looking for a little help on that.
I think when it comes to the actual fundraising nuts and bolts, a lot of it is in the coordination of this list and knowing when things are due what, who funds what, but a lot of it is also, I think, can be replicated, right? So once we kind of have identified what direction the gardeners want to go, what options are available as far as the land trust, we'll kind of know what we're putting that money into. And then, that's where I'm really happy. You can call on me and some of my colleagues who do grant making and stuff like that to put pitches like that together, and then maybe revisiting how we want to specifically adapt it for each one.
Yeah.
Because I think it's definitely useful to know who's out there and like what's fundable. So yeah, one person doesn't get stuck with the brunt of that work or not like barking up the wrong trees.
Yeah. But now that you all have access to it, if you do want to add any new funding sources that you think might be helpful for us, I think that would be good. But I think that our next steps are to, the Garden Council, we need to have a meeting with the gardeners, and I'll keep the same list and always invite you guys to all the meetings. And then it looks like Ron and Jean and Natalie and Skylar are gonna, and maybe Ron, you can be the one to try to set up the meetings with the city of Maplewood and with Capital Region Water District, unless you want somebody else to help set up the meetings. You have the contact information, but you need to find out when everybody else is available too. Maybe I could help with that as far as finding out when people are available and I don't know, how do we want to do that? Because we have to make sure that the people that we want to meet are available. How about if on Monday, we talk about that as well, about how, what some of the dates are that would be good, and then we'll try to send, we'll talk to the people that we want to meet with and then send you guys out some dates. Are there dates that just don't work for anybody? And I'm talking now, Natalie, Jean, and Skylar. Those are the three people that are going to meet with Capital Region Water District and who's the other person? City of Maplewood.
Maplewood.
Yeah. Are there times or dates that don't work? Those meetings are going to be in the day. Sorry, those meetings are going to be in the day because those are, working people.
Sure.
What is the time frame? Like the first week of July, second week, around that time?
I don't think it'll be the first week because that's a holiday. I think if it happens before the end of June, it'll happen probably the end of June weekend, and then it'll happen the second week in July. Those are the two dates we're probably looking at.
I agree.
Okay.
Because I don't see how we would get a meeting with those guys before that. I don't know how hard Sean is to meet with. She might not be as hard, but I don't know.
No, but it seems like we should talk to some planner, somebody in the planning department, because they're the ones who are going to drive the thing one way or another. I mean, Sean will be supportive, but she'll say you need to talk to these people, I think.
Mondays and Thursdays are pretty hard for me, and generally afternoons are going to be more open for me. I'm probably like the most needy person with the farm season ramping up, but just for what it's worth, I think afternoons are a better bet for me.
I am retired and I don't have any bosses. I'm open most of the time.
Okay.
My schedule is also kind of weird. So maybe just if you throw a couple dates out, I can try to make one of them work.
Okay. Jean, is there someone with the city of Maplewood that you think we should meet with?
I think Sean is one, but I agree with Ron. We should probably talk to one of their land use planners or the planner. And I don't know who that is.
I think
Sean
seems like she's.
I'm sorry. We should let Kim O'Brien.
I was just going to say,
too, by the way.
Yeah, it seems like Kim and Sean are really supportive. So I was just going to say maybe Sean would have a good perspective on who a good first person to talk to around land use planning would be, who might also be more supportive.
I mean, Kim is on first name basis with 3 mayors. So she would, we should at least kind of keep her in the loop somewhat, I think.
Sure.
Okay, so I think we have what we're going to be doing in the next month, right? So should we set a time? Well, we need to set a time for when T-Cult will present their 3 or 4 ideas to us.
Well, I'd like to jump in quick, Catherine, and make a suggestion.
Sure, Andrew, sorry.
Oh, no, quite all right, thanks. I've heard it mentioned by numerous people about, how to involve the gardeners, who are obviously very involved in the day-to-day use of the space. But in preparation for this meeting and the presentation, I think a more general sense of what the gardeners' priorities are and what's going to be at the meeting would be appropriate. So like some of the history of the garden briefly sent out by email. I'm thinking an email to the gardeners. It says the history of the garden, the threat of development, some background like that, and then possibility of greater involvement to help keep the garden into the future. And then some questions for those who may not be able to attend a meeting, but they can still have their voices heard, like sort of a survey of sorts. And then I think that would give them chances to get it translated by their kids or whoever else. Or I think it was Dominique who suggested that Sierra wouldn't be able to do some translation too. So I think in preparation for the meeting, just a lesson learned as we tried to get those transplants sold to members, that we could have given them a lot of heads up and would have had more success.
Yeah, definitely. Communicating with the gardeners can be challenging for sure.
I
And
think
we will
that's a
get-
great.
Go
Oh,
ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think that's a great idea, and we kind of have that infrastructure built for a survey, and we could always, some of us could kind of tag team that just to take the load off of y'all. Because like you said, it's many nations up in there, a lot of interpretation needing to be interpreted.
Well, if somebody wants to take on a survey, that would be awesome of what you think, what questions we should ask the gardeners, especially ones that maybe can't attend this.
Wasn't there already a survey written that we gave the gardeners last year?
Oh, yeah, that's right. Dominique, you guys put that.
Yeah,
together, right?
we did do it. We did do a survey, and we have those results in a spreadsheet that would be great to reshare with you all, just so that you know kind of what their feelings and opinions were, at least at this time last year.
That would
And
be
then I
great.
know that one thing we did in preparation of like an in-person meeting and conversation was we came up with kind of like a one sheet before the meeting that we could send out, that we could get translated, so that by the time folks are meeting with you, they've had, yeah, like you said, Andrew, they've had time to kind of digest like 5 bullet points or 6 bullet points about, just so they can start forming questions, and so that by the time you're actually together, they have questions or opinions of their own. Sometimes, I don't know, sometimes it's hard if you're learning in real time, if that's your one opportunity to kind of do brainstorming or think about what next steps are. Sometimes that's too soon. So that might be good. And so maybe if you at RSG thought about kind of 5 or 6 bullet points that you would want to make sure everybody knows before the meeting, that you feel like would give them the information they'd need to kind of figure out what they think is the right next step. Or just to feel like they have the skeleton of the situation, maybe you could get farther in that in-person meeting.
Right. No, I hear what you're saying. That's a good idea.
I also think that a next step, maybe a couple months from now, is maybe the leadership increases with some members who are gardeners.
Well, there were some invited to this meeting tonight, and
they didn't come.
Not here.
So,
There was a wonderful time when we had about 4 or 5 people who would join us for leading the gardens, and then slowly over time, they all disappeared.
Oh.
Unfortunately.
I think that pretty soon, whichever way you go, y'all are probably going to be deciding how decisions are made at Rice Street Gardens going forward, you know? So I think that's just something to think about too, is, I don't know. Yeah, if there's kind of this new iteration of Rice Street Gardens, I mean, assuming that people want to be at the table, what are some different ways? I don't know, what would a decision-making process look like if you did have to write bylaws? And for, I guess for everybody here, that's probably something that would be good to think about, because at this point, you kind of are the decision makers. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, do you all ever have like votes on things, or I don't know, for the gardeners, can they weigh in that way?
No.
No.
And there's have been times when there's conflict in the garden, and we have to, come up with solutions. And so, but yeah, right now it's pretty much a autocratic, it's run by us, and we are the they come to us and they know we're the last word. If the main controversies are, who does this garden belong to?
Somebody
Hey,
check my plot.
you didn't fill out the form, so you're out. Somebody else is gardening it.
Yes, it's actually, that's what Dana does, and it's just amazingly difficult. And it's something I try to stay away from for sure. I was thinking though, if we got something out to people, kind of what Andrew was saying, I think that's the start of what we should do, is saying, here's a brief history of the gardens. And I think the questions we ask them have to be really carefully chosen, because I don't think it's, I think it should include, how long do you think you will be gardening at Rice Street Gardens? That's a good one. Another one is, would you be willing to be a leader at Rice Street Gardens and spend some time helping manage it? That would be a great question. And we could see which people are interested. And there's probably 2 or 3 more like that. Or would you like to see it go on into the future a long way? Or I don't know. But
what if Rice Street Gardens could start over from scratch and start brand new? What would that look like?
What would you change?
Yeah, because we've asked questions like, would you be willing to accept a smaller number of plots, but so that we could still keep everybody having a plot? And that was incredibly.
That was in the last survey.
That was really
the survey you did.
No, they don't want that. They want more space almost entirely.
Yeah, they definitely want more space, not less.
So if somebody's not gardening their garden, immediately they say, hey, can I take over that garden? It's like within a day or two. So.
Well,
anyway.
I was new to me finding out that Skylar and you all had done a survey previously, so I'm still catching up on a lot of stuff. I would love to have like a shared document between us or whomever wants to be involved with.
Yeah, can you guys send out your survey? That would be great. Remind us.
I was thinking
There was
that,
actually,
and then if
there were actually 2 surveys. One is the one that Dominique and the crew did, where they interviewed like 40 people and got comments from each. And there was a separate one which had 10 questions on it. That's the one I was referring to, where it asked questions like, would you be willing to accept a smaller plot? Or if we have to give away plots, should we give them away to people who live in the area first? Questions like that, because.
What the people wanted when you asked them was, they said they wanted a garbage bin.
Yes, garbage is.
And we have it this year.
Well, I mean, for 5 years, there's been 2 major problem areas. One is communications, because we communicate by text and email and telephone and snail mail, and all of those things don't work. They don't get to everybody. And the other thing are pests, everything from mice to rabbits to deer to people. All those things take food from other people. And
well, I wouldn't say that. I would say there's one more, and that's trash. Trash has definitely been a big.
That's yeah. We can pick that up though.
Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, there's.
Well, I want to jump in for a second because I want to finish the thought before I lose it. Is well, whoever did the surveys, if it was you, Dominique, and I apologize, but I would like to see those, and I would like that we had like maybe a shared document that we can add questions to and have all of our sets of eyes on it to, see what we think makes sense and contribute the ideas, and then somebody can edit that and send it out and get a first attempt. And there could be subsequent surveys or something changes, but I thought that's a good starting place to know where folks are in the garden, and at least for me, because I'm saying that the founders, you all know more than I do, and that would help get us up to speed as allies in addition to the
Hey, Catherine, do
people
you
who
want
use
to
the
take a
plots.
first cut at some bullet points about the history?
Yeah, do you have the survey that you can share? And Dominique, you guys are saying that you have your results that you can share, right?
Yeah, I think we got shared on all of them. It was kind of a collective effort with Sierra Club and T-Cult and the interpreters who really worked to get them qualitatively filled out. And sign me up, I'd be definitely down. And Skylar, I want to pass it to you after this, but I'd be down to be a part of a group to draft some of those questions with Ron and Catherine and Dana just shared, and then maybe share a draft of those with you all and see if we could do survey round 2.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask, who should we share it with? Like, could we share it with one of you and then you could share it with the rest of the RSG leadership team kind of thing, or?
Sure. Yeah,
Okay.
if you share it with me, then I can make sure that the right people get it.
Okay, sounds good.
So if, yeah, just send it in an email and I'll make sure. And then Ron, same with you. If you could send your survey results, then I can make sure everybody gets it.
Yep. I should probably leave soon, go back to bed. I do have COVID, you know. And it's either that or fall to the floor right in front of you.
Well, this has been really good. Is there any last thoughts that we, do we want to schedule our next meeting, or
Good idea.
maybe I can just do that again in a, did I do it through a survey last, when is good poll? Or do we just want to do,
Why don't you just send out 2 or 3 options and see what people could do?
okay. And we probably want to meet when, like, like in 2 weeks, or do we, maybe in 2 weeks, and that's when T-Cult can give us their ideas on ways that we would hold the garden if we bought it. Does that sound good?
Yes.
Okay.
Natalie, I
Yeah.
see Skylar nodding that might work. Do you think that would work for you guys? Or it's after 4th of July?
I'm tied up on the 22nd, but the week of the 27th, I'm open.
Yeah,
Make it
that's
do-
what I'm thinking.
Let's do it late June.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we can do that. This is like kind of our really busy season, but I think having a deadline will help us actually do it. And if we
even
want
if
time
it's
to
just
meet
at a
next
high level, and then you could
Yeah.
fill in details later, maybe.
Yep.
Just giving us 3 or 4 options.
sounds good.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll look at everybody's, I'll send out a couple dates and we can make some another meeting. All right. Well,
gonna
we
say-
have, Skylar.
Oh, I was just gonna say that one thing T-Cult tries to do in the summertime is to host tours at different urban growing spaces to kind of like, celebrate what's going on or highlight some obstacles that growing spaces have going on to hopefully, build connections around. And we thought of as our Rice Street Gardens as being a good site to do a tour at, to kind of bring attention to some of, the problems going on there, but also that are problems that a lot of other growers have. And to also celebrate what you're already doing. So that's something we might be interested in doing in July or August too. And sometimes when we do that, we invite policymakers or other kind of players to bring them into this conversation and hopefully kind of get a larger conversation going. So if that's something that Rice Street Gardens would be interested in, we could explore that too.
For sure. Yeah.
Okay.
You're always welcome to come visit us. Anybody can come visit us. And also I am in contact with somebody from the Star Tribune that did the article on Rice and Larpenteur, the Rice and Larpenteur Alliance. And I've asked her, she said she wanted to have an article about Rice Street Gardens. So I emailed her like a month ago and said, hey, are you interested in writing? She goes, oh, yes. And then I haven't heard back from her. So I'll have to send her another reminder. When are you coming to visit the gardens?
Yeah.
Because to get positive press in the newspaper is good for us. All right. Anything else? All right. Well, Ron, I hope you feel better soon.
Yeah.
I
Thanks
will.
everybody for joining us.
I'll
Thank
try to
you.
put the movie on YouTube in the next 10 minutes and I won't have to worry about it.
All right. All right. Talk to you guys later.
Thank you.
Take care, folks.
All right.
Appreciate you.
Bye.
Bye.
Yep, bye-bye.